Welcome. I, Professor Xavier, have invited you all here because my X-Men have all died. Wolverine, dead. Cyclops, dead. Beast, dead. Jean Grey, double dead. So, I would like you all to introduce yourself to form my new team. Introduce yourself, young man.
I'm the hairball!
Ah, and what is your power?
I can grow hair on my body! Any part of my body, on command!
Well, that's totally disgusting.
Right?
Well, what is your real name?
My name's Harold Gines.
Oh, well, can I at least call you Harry?
Harry Gines?
Harry Gines for all. And who is next?
My name is Warp Boy.
Oh, I can clearly see what your power is. Please do not come near to me.
I just wanted to shake your hand,
No,
sir.
no. We do not shake here. Also, be sure to make full use of the Purell dispensers around the mansion.
All right. I'll
No, it's okay. Just go. Just go.
But I was just
No.
to... I'll be over here then?
You'll be over there.
Way over here?
That's good enough.
What about back here?
Just go out the door and stay there.
Is this fine, Professor?
Okay, next.
Hi, guys. Have I made it in time?
Oh, God. Your breath smells like a garbage truck ate garlic and then crapped its pants.
Hey.
No, please stop talking. The stench.
That's not very nice. Calm now.
No, I will not come anywhere.
Hey, that's enough from you.
I can use you in several small room missions, but I believe you're going to have to stay in the basement of the mansion. In the lowest level.
What? Was I not here to help?
You'll also have your own bathroom.
Oh, that actually sounds very nice.
I have assembled you here because I am sending you on a mission of vital importance.
What mission is that, Professor?
You're going on the same mission that the other X-Men died on.
Well, wait. Does that mean we'll die?
Well, possibly.
But we're not as good as the X-Men, so are we X-Men now?
Well, you're all I've got.
So are we still X-Men then?
No, you're Y-Men.
But why?
Well, that's what the enemies will be asking, isn't it?
I suppose, but can't we just be X-Men instead?
No, that would ruin the joke. Wart Boy, Halitosis Man, Hairball, my newest recruits. Godspeed you.
Alright, thanks, Professor!
Let's get him, Warp Boy!
Are they gone yet? Oh yes, they're gone. Oh God, they're so dead. Double dead.
Did I miss the addition?
Oh, yes. You. What's your power? Oh, is that tea?
Yes.
Earl Grey?
Yeah?
Hot?
Yes.
You're hired. Your name shall be Teabag.
I wasn't really thinking teabag. You see...
Well, what is your real name? What should I call you?
My name is Wesley Witherspoon.
Oh, well, it's Teabag now. Oh, shut up, Wesley.
This is JPar, and this is the We Promise Nothing show. This week on the show, we have Myles, we have Clayton, and we have Taboo. But before we get things started, I'd like to mention that the music you're listening to right now has been brought to you by SoundsLikeAnEarful.com. If you need great music for your podcast, check them out, SoundsLikeAnEarful.com. Now, this week, we review 2000's X-Men, directed by Bryan Singer, and here to talk to me about that are these three here. Say hello to the crowd, folks.
Hey, it's Clayton here.
Hey everybody, it's Myles.
Hey guys, Dabu here.
All right, and before we dig into X-Men, which was released in 2000, directed by Bryan Singer, and starring, just going to give you a few details here. It is directed by Bryan Singer. I'm pretty sure I've told you that 3 times already. It's starring Patrick Stewart, Hugh Jackman, Ian McKellen, Halle Berry, Famke Janssen, James Marsden, Anna Paquin, Ray Park, Rebecca Romaine, and others. This is coming off hot of the comic book of the same name, released by Marvel Comics back in the day, and also was a Saturday morning cartoon at the time, which I know all 4 of us being comic fans, even back in the day when this cartoon came out, it all had some sort of effect on our childhood. Tell me, Myles, how does X-Men affect you before even going to see this first X-Men movie, and before we talk about this first movie, let's talk about the impact that X-Men had on us.
Well, if I'm going to start things off, X-Men as a comic book, I didn't start reading X-Men before I started watching the actual animated series. That came first for me, and that got me interested in the lore, the comic book lore. And when I started reading the X-Men comics, I found that there was the parallel between the animated series and the comics was perfect. They took exactly what worked in the comics. They took arcs that they did in the comics and they put it on the screen. So that was so cool to see. And it had the awesome intro. Really set the pace.
Oh yeah, that's right. You got that too.
Yeah, that was perfect. See? It stuck in all our heads because we watched it ad nauseum. I think it's 5 seasons. I watched the full 5 seasons recently too as an adult. The first 4 seasons were really good. I don't know what happened with the 5th season. I highly recommend not watching it because it takes away.
They changed animators, and apparently there was a woman at Saban or Fox who was basically not getting along with Avi Arad, and then because of it, Spider-Man didn't get renewed on Fox, and that 5th season of X-Men just suffered because of it.
Yeah, it suffered hard, and that's how they left it. They ended it with a terrible note, which kind of sucks, but the first 4 seasons were so good. So going into the X-Men movie when I was younger, and it came out on my birthday, awesome. It kind of started a trend. There was X-Men movies and Spider-Man movies that came out one after another in May, and it was just one year after another, so it was really cool to see that.
The beginning of mainstream Marvel movies.
Yes. I'm just going to say it out loud. I think this kind of started that tradition where you look forward to a new Marvel-esque movie, because this is Fox, right?
Yes, Fox made these movies.
Yeah.
Which is something that's kind of ironic when you consider that Fox was the one who originally produced the Star Wars movies. Now Disney owns those. So it's kind of funny because, Disney would probably like to get their hands back on their X-Men franchise, but Fox is holding them very tightly. It's like, hey, you guys got our Star Wars now. We're definitely going to keep holding on to these X-Men over here.
Well, if Marvel can do on the big screen what Fox did on the small screen with X-Men, I think it would be a tremendous hit. Like, don't water down any of the characters, like Wolverine, for example. Give us what we had in the comics and the animated series, and everyone will be happy. Case dismissed, billion-dollar movies. You're welcome. Free frickin' Advice, yeah.
Basically, just make the stories in the comics be what happens on the screen. That's basically what we want to see in most cases. I mean, obviously, you have to clean up some of the cheesiness. So let's just, for people who aren't familiar with X-Men, yeah, you're probably like, just another superhero movie? Maybe. This one has a kind of a twist where we start dealing with mutants in the Marvel universe, or just in this world in particular, because you don't have to worry about the other heroes in this sense, because X-Men is a franchise all to its own. It's a world where people are fearful of mutants, and they're oppressing them, much like many other kinds of people have been oppressed in the past. They show this very well with the opening scene of, Magneto and him being oppressed by Nazis, obviously. They kind of paint it very well without actually really showing it, but they do it quite well. But I am getting a little too much into the movie, so Dabu, why don't you tell me how X-Men has affected you as a child?
Honestly, X-Men was, I think the only way it had affected me were those cartoons. I feel like they were one of the only moments where I think I was introduced to these characters. You're right about one thing. I remember their world being very different in that mutants were always kind of, brought down. almost like they were frowned upon. You know, the heroes of their world are not exactly, you know, perfect, right? But I think that's what I really enjoyed about this, was that there was always this push for these anti-heroes. These guys were not wanting to have attention put on them, but the world kind of forced it upon them.
Yeah.
So they suddenly were forced to be the heroes the world kind of, you know, needed, right? So again, we ended up with a lot of iconic characters. Again, Wolverine being, I think, one of the most predominant for me.
Definitely the most popular out of the X-Men characters.
I think when going into a movie like this one, though, I think because those characters were not quite significant from one over the next, up until I got to appreciate what each character brought. Once I think these, like you guys had said, this was the beginning of those Marvel movies. I started to appreciate them more. And not only that, I started to appreciate a lot of the lore they brought in from the comics that I'm not familiar with, but a lot of big fans and followers of the comics would go out of their way to show me. So I'm starting to notice a lot of the little details, I think, that we all take for granted. Mm-hmm. So this is one of those, I think, I walked away from the film. It drew in a lot of those elements properly.
All right, and of course we are doing this because pretty soon Hugh Jackman may be portraying Wolverine for the final time in the upcoming Logan, and we will definitely be reviewing that on a future episode. But before, once again, we get into this movie with Clayton, let's nostalgia factor. How does X-Men work for you?
Well, when I was a little kid, we lived out in the sticks. We just had rabbit ears for our TV, so we only had Peasant Vision, which is Channel 5 and 9. And X-Men was one of the...
Lucky enough to get X-Men on those one of those two channels.
Exactly. X-Men was one of the only actually legitimate cool cartoons that we got, and it was, at that age, 8 or 9 was pretty much my first exposure to the X-Men. But I had seen like the Spider-Man cartoons and stuff, but X-Men presented something a lot different because human beings were the bad guys. Like, they're spearheaded by mutants that don't have no love of humanity, or that their powers are spun in such a way that humans believe that they're evil, when the potential for good and evil is in every person.
Right.
Like
mutants or humankind.
Exactly, right? So people who are just humans use their powers for evil or good the same way that mutants can. Mutants' powers are just more pronounced. I got a lot out of that cartoon. Later on, though, once it started to go, I think it went into syndication and reruns, the episodes started to play out of order all the time. You'd have one where, the episodes were just out of order and you couldn't make heads or tails of the storyline. And we didn't have the internet at that time, so you couldn't go online and watch the episodes in order.
Or Netflix, which you can watch on Netflix now.
Yeah, exactly.
You can watch the 90s Spider-Man, 90s
Yeah, there were
X-Men
no
on Netflix.
streaming services.
Yeah, exactly.
But the cartoon was still watchable on an episode-to-episode basis, and the animation was really good. So after that, I started actually reading X-Men comics, and then I just pretty much like everybody else got into Wolverine, and that cartoon actually pretty much jump-started my love of comics.
Yeah, I've always been a comic fan. Definitely, I always knew of the X-Men, and I had a friend who was starting to get into Wolverine before the cartoons came out, so I started getting into Wolverine a bit, and then really with the X-Men cartoons, I got to know these characters much more. So it wasn't just Wolverine I got to know more about Storm, and I got to know more about Gambit and Rogue, these other cool X-Men that I actually didn't really know too much about. So I got to know more about that, which was great. I mean, didn't jumpstart my love for comics. I already loved comics before this. It's just added more fuel to the fire, I guess, if anything. So now let's fast forward to 2000, where we see Bryan Singer's X-Men. Does this movie match up to the cartoon? Does it match up to the comics? Looking at the cover, it looks like everyone's dressed like they're from The Matrix, so I don't understand that part, but maybe someone else can fill me in. How does it affect you, Myles? Looks like you want to say something.
I think the costume design was A1.
Really?
I liked it. I liked that Storm was wearing whites all the time because her costume was white. Wolverine, when he's first introduced in Canada, they show him with his jacket, and it's his...
That's fine. I don't mind
iconic
that.
jacket.
I'm just talking about their actual X-Men outfits. I find it's just too easy, because the year before that, it was The Matrix. It's okay, let's just dress everyone in leather. It's the future now. Everyone's wearing black leather.
Well, they did make note of that in the jet when they're on their way to go fight in the third act. They said, hey, it could be worse. We could be wearing yellow spandex, because that was their original jumpsuits.
That's what I would have liked to see.
Yeah, but I don't think it would have turned out as well on the big screen, because I think they did that in First Class.
Yeah, they did.
It had some nostalgia factor to it, but it looked kind of cheesy, lame.
I think you could
and it
modernize
worked in the 60s.
outfits.
It worked in that 60s era, which was,
Yeah.
you know.
But I think you can modernize the outfits to make them look not as cheesy and still make it look like their outfits.
I was fine with the all black
Yeah.
outfits. That was cool.
I'm with you on that because leather is actually a flexible. What for a long time was a flexible armor, like leather, boiled leather cuirasses and stuff like that. Leather is actually a long used material for armor. So the fact that they changed from spandex, which has precisely zero projectile or stab deflecting properties, choosing leather is like an obvious choice.
Yes, I 100% agree. If they wouldn't have made note of it, if they wouldn't have said something in the movie, I don't know if maybe they added that in later on. It's like, hey, people are going to get mad because they're not wearing yellow. So we should probably have a little quippy moment. And then they did it.
It's not even I was mad that they didn't wear yellow. It was just, like I said, it was just too derivative of the Matrix. Like, I mean, they're all wearing black. It's like, fuck, you guys look like fucking Neo in Crew, kinda. And then, like, also Mystique. Does she not do fucking floaty Matrix stunts?
That was fine with me. I did not see The Matrix when I watched this
Really?
movie.
That just goes to show you how big of an impact The Matrix had on movies at that time, though, because The Matrix was huge.
And at that time, I was so fucking sick of movies ripping off The Matrix, and I thought there was no damn reason to have it in an X-Men movie.
Tell us how you really feel.
I can, but
You sound angry.
I'd take over the rest of the show if I did. So, Dabu, did the outfits affect you?
Honestly, no. I think I can understand that when it comes to pulling characters out of the pages of a comic, in this case, drawing in a lot of those natural colors, a lot of them are actually excessively bright. Yeah. I mean, this bright yellow spandex, as we keep joking about, there's a reason why, as anyone who's about to attack something else, the last thing you want to do is be, shown in bright yellow anything. I know what you're saying. Trying to incorporate some level of modernism to their costumes, I don't think it would have been as needed. In this case, it did the job. They were suiting up to go, take care of a task of sorts, right? Whether if it was danger or not, it was like a team outfit. That's all it needed to do, really. I think I don't know whether if I go as far even to think about the leather being a stabbing or any kind of deterrent. It's really just for the sake of having a uniform, I think, is what it was.
Yeah.
But honestly, they could go in jeans and a t-shirt. It wouldn't make a difference. Their abilities are what make them the team. So this is where I think it had more to do with what's practical and what's effective on screen for a film.
Okay, well, I've already got you guys talking about the clothing that they wear. So why don't you tell me first impressions going around the table, Myles?
First impressions of the movie?
Yeah.
I liked it. When I first seen it, I liked it. It got me hooked, and I wanted to see
more. You saw it when
more.
it came out in 2000.
I seen it when it came out in theaters in 2000. I watched it again, the extended cut or whatever, the Bryan Singer cut, and then I watched it again last night, and it was still good. Like I liked it. I liked seeing there was little Easter eggs that I didn't catch the first time that I caught last night that just made me realize, okay, they are doing a good homage to the comics and the animated series. They're not. It's not that they're skipping over things. It's what works on screen, and I think that's why we didn't see the yellow jumpsuits or we didn't see weird powers or weird mutations on screen. And we got the classic X-Men, we got the classic villains, and I was fine with that. It was perfect. It wasn't too much. It wasn't too gaudy. I liked it.
It was certainly a nice blend of the characters. I think there was just some that they just could have done away with and replaced with probably some more significant characters, like Toad, in my opinion.
Why Toad?
There were so many other better villains that they could have tapped into. And
are you saying why Toad because you think he's insignificant as well, or
why Toad? Why did they?
He's just not a character that I would have thought of when it came to most of the X-Men supervillains.
Yeah.
One thing I have to admit, this is the only version that I really appreciated their Sabretooth. Because their Sabretooth in this one made perfect sense, to a degree, rather. But then they followed it up with, I forget what's his name.
He was okay.
He
played Schreiber.
It was believable in the sense that they were brothers, but at the same time, I look at him and it's like, that's not Sabretooth. Whereas this one was truly visually, as well as the way he reacted to Wolverine. Wolverine and him were the only two that can go toe-to-toe in an instinctive sense, I think. But I don't know if I have to go as far as to say, though, the costumes threw me off. I will go as far to say that I think Wolverine had more I guess maybe there's more to him that I was hoping to see. They really concentrate on him a lot, but I feel like what they did perfectly well was bringing him up as a Canadian character, because he truly was Canadian, and they had to emphasize that. Otherwise, they'd have a lot of upset fans easily.
Clayton.
Okay, I actually really like the movie too. I'm with Boo on this one. The Sabretooth in this movie was, in my opinion, perfect. The only guy I could think of better to play Sabretooth is Triple H. I would love to see Triple H as Sabretooth. Sorry, that's just my thing.
You told me, and I could actually see it.
Also, and I am going to set the internet on fire with this, I am not a fan of Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. He's just not, he's not big enough, he's not built enough, he's not thick enough. I have grown to accept him as Wolverine, but he was never my first choice. I like how he and Rogue are both introduced to the X-Men as an already fully functioning team, and they know how to work together with their powers, and he's kind of like the last piece of the puzzle, and they all manage to work like well together. But I felt like the balance for some of the characters was off. They didn't go as much into Storm, Scott Summers, and
those are characters that were completely ignored. Cyclops and Storm.
They were kind of sidelined, and
big time.
It felt more like the movie was Wolverine and the X-Men, not just the X-Men.
Something I pointed out to the Boo while we were watching X-Men, I was saying, it's like, Hugh Jackman and Famke Janssen have more lines together than she does than with the guy who plays Cyclops. And they're supposed to be in a relationship together. Like, there's a better chemistry between Wolverine and Jean Grey than there is Cyclops and Jean Grey. And I'm like, why the fuck are you even with Cyclops? Like, they've never gave us any inkling as to, like, why she's with Cyclops. They never give us any character to Cyclops. He's just the guy with glasses. You know what I mean? Like, even Storm, she's just Halle Berry in a Storm outfit.
Don't go into spoilers too much, though. Your mutant power is comic book angry.
It is, because I'm going to tell you, when it comes to certain comic book movies, it's like, I guess I expected too much out of this movie when I was younger. And then when everyone walked away from the theater, they're like, yeah, it's pretty good. And I'm like, oh, they fucked so much up. Like, yeah, they got a lot of shit right. I'll say that. They got a lot of stuff right. And when I was watching it last night, I'm like, maybe this isn't as bad as I remember. But then those little things just started happening. I'm like, ugh. Like, it's just cringe factor. And it's just like, being a super comic book fan that I am, I'm just like, that's not right. That's not right. You know, there's some things I can forgive. And there was a lot about this movie that I wasn't able to forgive. And it was the beginning of a long end of bad mistakes made by Fox. That's kind of how I feel about it. The fact that this is one of the better one out of the X-Men movie, that's terrible, because this isn't that good. Like, honestly.
We promise criticism.
Yeah, you guys want to do ratings? Go, Myles.
I'm going to give it a 3.5. The reason being is, I liked that they had Toad in there, because in the comic books and the animated series, the Brotherhood of Mutants was Mystique, was Toad, and Magneto. And they also had Pietro and Quicksilver and
the
Scarlet Witch.
Twins.
Yeah, they had the Maximoff twins, but they can't have them because
whatever.
Avengers. Yeah. So I like that. To me, there was so many little Easter eggs. They had what is his name? He played the voice, George Buza, who played the voice of Beast. He was the one who introduced Rogue to Wolverine. Right at the beginning, he's the truck driver. He brings her to...
So he's the voice of Beast in the cartoon.
Yeah,
that's cool.
So that
I didn't
was
know
cool.
that.
Well, it was little stuff like that kept popping up throughout the movie.
You know what?
Like,
I never read like a real facts and trivia on this.
You know, you just gotta watch the movie and just watch it. It was so cool. Like the outfits, the one-liners, the tag team group ups. It was like, I hear what you're saying. There was more love interest between Wolverine and Jean Grey, but that happened in the comics and it happened in the cartoon. It was always the two, Cyclops and Jean Grey, were always dating, but Wolverine was always trying to sneak his claw in there.
But at least there was like the characters. There was at least Cyclops and Jean Grey interacted with each other. There was like, okay, they might have a relationship. I can see that. But it's like, while I'm watching this, it's like, what? She's not with that guy. She doesn't even like that guy.
They were trying to
like,
create...
every time Wolverine talks, she's like, she's got that little blush on her face. It's like, okay, you still want Wolverine. Like, why even with glasses over there? Like,
she's with the leader of the X-Men, and Wolverine, he don't give a Right? Exactly, and that's what I liked. It gave Wolverine that toughness that he had in the comics and in the cartoon show. Like, he was essentially immortal, so he could do whatever he wanted to, and he was a badass. He was always smoking cigars, kicking people's asses, killing people. So I like that.
Did you see any blood in this movie?
No, there was no blood.
Mm-hmm.
And I was fine with that. I was totally fine with that. Take it for what it is. It's PG-13, right? So it was a good jump-off platform for the franchise. If you didn't know what was coming next, X-Men Final Stand,
X-Men United was first.
Well, X-Men Last Stand, sorry.
This is the last one.
That was the one that killed it for me. So if you didn't know that was coming up, you'd swear they're onto something really cool.
Actually, you know what? Kind of hate to say it, I kind of like that one better than this one.
Oh my god. Okay, Boo, you gotta talk now.
This review is over.
Yeah. Party's over.
See, I feel like number 3 just did too many mistakes.
I don't even know where to
That's
go
not
with
even
this.
what we're doing with this. I feel like
they definitely did.
with this first movie, though, I feel what they did really well was really start with a dark tone of, once again, emphasizing how humans are viewing mutants as almost like a disease. It's the second you show symptoms of being potentially a mutant, we gotta send you into quarantine. That tone that right from the beginning of the movie started right up until halfway into this one, and then the last half of it was having the X-Men show exactly what they were capable of, and that's where it got me a little bit pissed off. They started great, they ended wrong. This movie should have been able to tell me a story where these mutants were definitely quite powerful, Magneto being very much the most powerful in this whole movie for the moment being, with the exception of Professor X. But Professor has got his hands tied. He's just too politically held up because he's not supposed to give the rest of humanity the impression like mutants are not to be trusted. He's trying to do the opposite. He's trying to instill that trust, right? But I felt like by the end of the movie, they did the total opposite, which is clearly what the story arc was trying to do. But it took away from that dark element that I was really hoping they were pushing for, right? For instance, Rogue accidentally hospitalizes a young boy because she kisses him, in her bedroom. It's just like another teenager, right? But at the same time...
But if you don't know Rogue's origin by now...
Yeah, and and even if it wasn't an origin story, it was just to show that a mutant was capable of killing someone, whether they had planned it or not, right? So that's kind of a dark undertone. And then by the end of the movie, they don't really kill anyone off. There's even a hell of a lot more mistakes just with some other simpler things, but I don't want to get into that. I just feel like they had a good foothold and ended on a bad note. That's maybe my only gripe with this. On the other hand,
with you on that.
I'm going to disagree with you in that number 3 is not better than the first.
I don't know if
Definitely
it's better,
not. It's
but
the worst.
The third one
I'm not
has so
saying
much
this
more
one's so
expected.
good either.
There's too
There's
many,
a lot of great
too many
things in this.
characters.
I have a problem with almost every single one of these X-Men movie, but the first one I got problems with, the third one I got problems with. I have problems with the second one, but the second one's... I like the second one a little bit better than the other ones. The first 1 and 3, but...
Oh, and I do have to admit,
I'm so conflicted with these movies.
Hugh Jackman, I don't have so much an issue with being as Wolverine. I think the only issue I had with Wolverine, whoever they would cast for him as his character, I always visioned Wolverine
Danny
being
DeVito.
Shorter. Maybe not that short.
He was busy
But
being the penguin.
shorter
in
than the
Batman.
rest of the group, but wide-shouldered. So he clearly looked like a massive guy, but when you have him standing next to even someone like Jean Grey, Jean was quite substantially, almost a good foot and a half taller than him almost.
I think Sabretooth always refers to him as Runt.
Yeah, and you got rid of that
But not
joke.
in this movie!
Yeah, you get rid of that joke.
Which
again,
is another thing that bugs the shit out of me.
These are, again, little details that when you add them up can be a bit of an issue, but I didn't really see so much of that as too big of a problem. They started showing themselves in the second and third movie for me, because that's when they started repeating those same mistakes and never bothered to at least cover themselves up.
So what'd you give it?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was actually giving it the same 3.5. I never did start with a rating.
Clayton.
Okay, I'm going to give it a 3.5 too. And I just clear your minds. Go back to 2000, right? The year 2000. And try to think about how many legitimately good comic book movies there were out at that time. It's not like
None,
it is now,
because this movie was out.
It's not like it is. It's not like it is now, where Marvel puts out a new movie every year, where you've got DC and Marvel going head to head, and then they're bringing out all these other comic book movies. The movie landscape there was not a lot of comic book movies out at that time, and it looked like they actually tried to. As a comic book fan, when you see a comic book movie, your first instinct is to just say, "Oh my God, look at all the stuff they left out! They left everything out. They could have done this and this and this." But they got to start somewhere. So I'm actually kind of glad that they started fairly small with a decent script and kind of tried to modernize everything and adapt everything for the screen in a way that was a little bit more organic rather than try to make it look like a comic book. Changing, like, I didn't care for the costume designs at first until I actually thought about it, and then I was like, oh, this kind of makes a little bit more sense. And I liked, like Myles said, all the little Easter eggs and stuff that they put in. And Tyler Mane as Sabretooth. I love Sabretooth, so I loved his portrayal, like, and I wanted them to bring him back. And also, without giving anything away, the characters in the movie are actually, I like that the bad guys, there's more than one team of bad guys, as a term, and they're not relegated to just one-dimensional cardboard cutout bad guys that, oh, you're a bad guy, you're getting knocked down, you know what I mean? Their motivations for these people were all clearly laid out, and if you looked at things from their perspective, you could almost empathize with their side, which makes for a really compelling villain or villains. Right? I see you giving me the...
I 100% agree, because that is the biggest problem with comic book movies
even,
right now. Why are
guys,
the bad guys doing what they're doing? There's no
But
heart,
they're
there's
not
no
bad
soul.
guys inherently as bad guys.
They're
just people with their
guys.
own motivations, and sometimes they cross sides. Maybe they're not always bad guys.
Exactly.
They're people. Whether they're mutants or whether they're people, they're all people. And I think that they did a really good job getting that across.
You guys clearly like this movie more than me, so I guess I gotta give it a 3.
Did you just say you have to give it?
Hold on.
What were you going to give it?
Yeah.
I was battling between a 3 and a 3.5. I'm going to tell you why. Because when I first went to go see this movie and I walked out of the theater, I was like, that movie's a 3. It's in the middle somewhere. It's definitely not the X-Men movie that I really wished it could have been. But, I mean, they did do some things that were okay that made it passable. Maybe they'll get it right in the next one. Maybe. No, I'm not a clairvoyant or anything, but how many years later? 16 years later.
And how many movies?
And how many ones did they get right out of how many that they did?
But now you're almost allowing your influence of those following movies.
But I'm not, because I just told you I would have given it a motherfucking 3 when I walked out of that movie in the year 2000. I had so many fucking gripes about that fucking movie. I'm gonna fucking tell you. Alright? Yeah, okay. The guy looked good as Sabretooth. He didn't have any fucking lines. He barely said anything. Rarely did anything with Wolverine. There was no rant and no fighting. Like it's like they didn't even know each other. We're going to spoilers now.
Liv Schreiber looks like an accountant. I don't buy it.
At least he fucking acted. At least he had lines with him. At least there was some sort of connection between the two characters. It wasn't like rah rah rah. Oh, I got your dog tags, and that's it.
Focus on X-Men.
I am focusing on X-Men because an important part of X-Men is the feud between Wolverine and Sabretooth and their history together. And instead of building up a story where they can make a proper sequel to this movie, which they never did, and you fucking know it, and also part 3 sucks, and almost all the other ones fucking suck, and you fucking know it, and it's because they didn't start from the ground up. They didn't do something good and build it slowly up. They just shat on a fucking piece of fucking paper and said, here's your fucking X-Men.
We promise X-Men.
So after you say all that, you're giving it a 3. It's very surprising.
You're right, but I'm pissed. You're right. I should give it less. But I'm going to give it 3 because Ian McKellen is fucking awesome as Magneto.
He was.
And even though Hugh Jackman isn't the best choice for looking as Wolverine, he is definitely someone who grew on me as Wolverine, and I really did appreciate that. Something else that I really like. They did not kill the villain at the end. Something you guys said, yes, we understand the villain's motives. I love Magneto in this movie. And right at the beginning, you get his origin story. You understand why the way he is. I love that. They didn't kill the villain. They kept the villain in all the movies. That was good. But when you get to the end of this movie, like Boo says, it starts falling apart. It's like, okay, you got all this great, you got a great reason for Magneto, why he wants to do this. You got the awesome scene where he's got the guns to all the cops' heads and all that. You're like, holy shit, Magneto's powerful. And this is a great politically driven story. And then you get to the end and it just ends up being the cheesiest supervillain plot that I ever fucking heard. Where did he get this machine to turn everyone into mutants? And I don't know. It just sounded like a convoluted villain plot at the end. I was like, Magneto, I gave you so much more credit because this story was going somewhere, and I felt it just built up to I just didn't like that third act. That end scene just really took a crap on the rest of the movie for me. I think I would have been able to accept all the other little gripes that happened through the movie. Also, didn't like who they cast as Rogue, by the way.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, not my Rogue, sorry.
Nope.
And they made her a very weak character throughout the whole series. She never at all ever evolved to the Rogue that we all know and love. She always stayed that little girl, and she even forfeited her powers in the third one, so there's not even a good ending to her story arc. So, once again, a place where they missed the opportunity, and because they missed the opportunity on this first X-Men, they missed the opportunity on all future X-Men movies. And that's why it gets a 3.
You can't have Rogue from 1992's X-Men because she just finished taking the powers of Miss Marvel, and then you'd have to introduce the Kree, you'd have to introduce the Inhumans.
Don't do Miss Marvel. I'm sure there's another X-Men
That's
character.
the Rogue that you wanted.
Okay, but
There's
You can't
another
have
X-Men
that
character
Rogue.
you can introduce that she can get those powers from. They made up everything else anyways, and they fucking took a shit on the continuity, so what does it matter if they change one more thing?
Because for every person like you who says, what does it matter? There's 10 more people out there who say it matters.
Exactly.
Comic book people are completely
Yeah, but how many
divided
more
when it
people
comes
would have
to
preferred
movies.
the real Rogue instead of the shitty version
I
of
was
Rogue?
fine
Well-
with this Rogue because they started off with her putting her boyfriend Cody in a coma, and that's exactly how her origin starts.
Yeah.
In every
I'm not
sentence.
denying
And she
that.
was young. Actually, I
And
think
she was young.
they make it a flashback or something. But then when she joins the X-Men, she's grown up. But that you wouldn't make the connection on screen between that 14-year-old girl and a grown Rogue suddenly being at the X-Men.
I completely understand that you can only have so much in one movie.
Yeah, and I
before
understand
the
that too.
non-comic book person will
Yeah.
get confused and be like, what the fuck is happening
that's
here?
the point that I was
So you
making.
please that little 1% audience,
Yeah.
and then everyone else is like, what the fuck
What
is this
happened?
shit?
Which
Yeah.
happens all
They
the
did
time.
it with
does happen.
they did it with the Marvel Universe. Why couldn't they have done it back then? Why couldn't they just sat
Because
down
now
and worked it all out?
Comic book movies are mainstream now.
Yeah.
They are in the public eye.
Oh, I understand
Way
that.
more people are
Pioneered the
reading
way.
Comic books.
Oh, I agree
You know
that
what,
they
as
did.
you look at it,
and
as-
I will
as
give
a
them
start,
credit for it, but I'm going to tell you, it's not a very good movie.
It's a 3.
It's a good
It's a
okay.
great
It's a
movie.
good movie. It's a 3, but it's not a great movie. Like it's there, but it could have been so much better. It's so much potential.
You've had 17 years though to like look back on it and reflect on it and think
Yeah,
about
and
it.
I was
you
upset back then, and I'm still upset
yeah, but
about
you had
it.
all these movies to go through it, and you know what?
Yeah, and I saw the end result, and
put it
because
up
they
against all
started
those
with
other
shit, they
movies.
ended with shit.
So should we get into our best and worst, or what?
I think I just said my best and worst, didn't I? Honestly, okay, the X-Men movies are kind of getting better, but I feel like they really started weak with this one. And so my favorite part is definitely the additions of the cast, half the casting. I'm not going to say all the casting, because Halle Berry as Storm is terrible. Halle Berry can't fucking act, and
Is this
She won Best Actress.
Yeah.
The Oscar
I don't
winner.
give a fuck. She also won Worst Actress the same year for Catwoman. So you can't argue that.
Oh my God, Catwoman!
She got a Razzie the same year she got an Oscar. Once again,
She was
Storm
great in
is
Swordfish.
Can I tell you a story about Catwoman?
Actually,
No.
I got Catwoman. I got Catwoman in a package of movies. I got the 3 Matrix movies. I got Constantine, and I got Catwoman in an HMV bundle. And I watched the other movies, and Catwoman sat on top of my DVD player for a month. And I said, "What? It can't be that bad." And I popped it in. And after she woke up, and all the cats were in love with her after the accident. Spoiler alert! But you're not gonna watch that piece of garbage anyways. I took the disc, put it in the case, and I threw it on my front lawn, and I slammed the door. And that's my Catwoman movie story. I don't know what happened to it. I'd like to think it's burning somewhere in the 9th ring of hell right now. It was terrible.
How many
Anyways,
rings are there?
So my my favorite is the casting of Magneto and Xavier, Patrick Stewart, and Ian McKellen as Magneto, which were both the driving points of these movies. If it wasn't for these two, this movie wouldn't have gone anywhere. Hugh Jackman definitely did a great job. So anyways, I really love some of the casting choices, so that's my favorite. That's what really sold a lot of the movie. And my least favorite is
the last half of the movie.
pretty much like the third act. Like, I don't like Magneto's plan. I think his plan is dumb. It doesn't make sense, and it goes way too, you build up this awesome character, and you make me believe his motives and everything, and then you just give me like a typical comic book Saturday morning cartoon kind of plot at the end, and I don't like it. Like, they could have made it more in tone with the rest of the movie, where it was like this Senate that was against mutants, and they could have really built up on the terrorism, or of Magneto or whatever. They could have done it differently. I think they could have, if they're going to make it realistic, and they're going to make the mutants realistic and make this whole thing, then they could have went all the way and just did it instead of just turning into a comic book plot at the end. And I'll try not to bitch anymore. But no promises.
Okay, I'm gonna...
Clayton, worst and best.
Okay, best for me is actually the Senator Kelly subplot line. And the reason I say that is because at the beginning of the movie, they paint Senator Kelly as an ardent... he's vehemently against any mutant forms of life. He's bucking for whatever...
the Mutant Registration
right?
Act.
Exactly. And then Magneto's plan seems completely asinine. So at a point in the movie, they decide to exhibit why he wants to turn all of the people affected by the machine into mutants. After Kelly is exposed to the ray, he gains mutant powers. And then at that point, he feels like he's the one who's hunted. He discovers what it's actually like to be a mutant. And that's a very small scale, that's a microcosm of the effect that Magneto's going for. He believes that if everybody becomes mutants, then everybody will know what it's like to be a mutant. The only problem is that the effects of the mutagen ray, or whatever you want to call it, is unstable. And he eventually breaks down and turns into water. But Kelly goes from being an antagonist to not necessarily a protagonist, but he understands and kind of flips sides. And at the same time, I was saying that I like the fleshing out of the characters because they give you Magneto's backstory at the beginning, and you know why he's the bad guy. In fact, he's the first character that they actually introduce.
Yes.
And with that,
Magneto is the best part of the movie.
You are introduced from the very inception of the greater X-Men story arc. You are introduced to the world that the X-Men are actually born into. Like, if humans are always prone to fear and mass hysteria, and at that point in time, it was the Nazis and the Jews, World War II, concentration camps. And 40, 50 years later, humanity still hasn't learned their lesson, and now they're not ready to ostracize the Jews anymore. Now it's the mutants. And the mutants are dangerous, and there's all kinds of political propaganda going around stating that mutants are dangerous. They can get into your houses. They can get into your minds. They can do all of these things to you. And Jean Grey, in a Senate, the one scene in the Senate hearing, actually says, Senator Kelly says, these people have all these powers. What if they can come into your house? They're dangerous. These people are dangerous because they have the powers. And Jean says, well, you put a dangerous person behind the wheel of a car, and they have the potential to end life. It's not the power that's the danger. It's the potential and the person actually using it. It's the human that's the danger.
Yeah.
It's the human in the mutant that's the danger. So I really like the idea that they fully tried to flesh out the characters and not just make them one-dimensional cutouts.
Mm-hmm. So your favorite is how much they pushed the mutant agenda.
Yeah, well, it was basically, the movie was basically holding a mirror back up to society and saying,
they had to do that.
Stop fabricating enemies because we're all just people.
Yeah. No, and that was a good part of the movie. So what is your least favorite?
Well, like I said, Wolverine. I don't understand why. There's a lot of problems surrounding him. I don't understand why they tried to shoehorn his and Jean's love story into the movie. Because they keep trying to push it, and yet those two don't really have any chemistry. And they're trying to. It's
more
like
chemistry than her and the
her
Cyclops
and Scott.
characters.
Yeah, but that's not how it really works, is it? Because her and Scott are already in an established relationship, and he comes in, and it's like they're acknowledging that in the comics, Wolverine and Jean have this kind of thing together, but there's just a totally fucked up love triangle going on there where it's like, oh yeah, whatever, that's just my boyfriend Scott, he's a total dick.
Yeah,
and Wolverine's like, yeah, you're a total dick, and he's like, oh yeah, okay, I get it.
He's like, yeah, I'm a dick.
Yeah,
don't go near my girlfriend. I'm a dick.
Yeah, right. And I felt like that kind of thing was kind of.
And then later on, it's like, wait, it's me. How do I know
How do
that?
I know it's you?
You're a dick.
You're a dick. Yeah, exactly. And he's like, okay.
And then even Cyclops like, okay.
That checks out. Yeah, you got that.
You're right, I am a dick, so
Yeah.
that works.
He knows me, yeah.
And you know that, so
Yeah.
you know me.
Yeah, those little quips were kind of cool, but I still felt like Wolverine is just. I was just expecting somebody else for Wolverine. That's all. I can't really level anything against Hugh Jackman's actual portrayal of the character.
Yeah.
And I mean,
So you just want to see Wolverine shorter and wider, like he's supposed to be.
For me, and I'm trying to think back when I first saw the movie. In my mind, when I first watched X-Men, I wanted out-of-work bodybuilders to play superheroes. I wanted those jacked physiques. I wanted those guys to be larger than life. Like, for me, back at that time, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Colossus. Every time somebody asked me about that,
Perfect.
That's exactly what I think of. And I always wanted those
not nice.
larger-than-life physiques to transfer over to those characters. So I'm glad that actually that Jackman took it seriously, though, and that he got totally ripped, and he's awesome, but no problem.
Myles.
What was the best for me? Anytime the X-Men clashed with the Brotherhood of Mutants, I loved it. When Wolverine first fights Sabretooth and Sabretooth is beating the crap out of him with trees, that was amazing. I loved it. And then Storm comes in and, makes him disappear. I'm cool with that. Every time they fought, or when they fought in the train station, that was amazing. I loved it. I loved how they took Toad, who is such a small, insignificant character, but he could hold his own. He was doing acrobatics. He was using his tongue. He was dispatching several X-Men at once.
Played by Ray Park.
Who was also known as Darth Maul. Yeah, that was pretty cool. So yeah, he is a martial artist in real life. And
Yes, he is.
And I can't remember the art of the staff, but he's a martial artist like that too. Anyways, the action scenes were wicked. It was amazing. I loved it. It was so good, especially for like the 2000s. I don't care if they ripped off some Matrix stuff like slow-mo kicking or punching or whatever. I liked it. It turned out good on screen, good special effects. It was so good. Like when Senator Kelly was turning into a jellyfish or whatever, I was watching. I'm like, okay, I remember this happens. Let's see how it looks today. And it held the test of time. It was really well done. And the subplots, like you said, like the inherent racism, this new racism that people were being affected by. They didn't know these people. They were scared. And how do we deal with them? And you had both sides of the same coin. Okay, they're dangerous. They have mutant powers that we don't know about. But at the same time, who are they as a person? Who, like you said, the analogy where the person's behind the wheel of a car. Anybody behind the wheel of a car is a danger. You know what I mean? You swerve to the left really quick, you kill somebody.
Another argument that Robert Kelly and Jean Grey were arguing about was saying that we register people to have guns, and then Jean Grey says, yeah, but you don't register people to live.
Yeah.
Boom. And then she dropped the mic and walked out. No.
And then Senator Kelly's like, oh, I fucking hate that Jean Grey.
You get the distinct feeling, though, that Kelly is purposely stoking the fires of the mutant Registration Act, specifically to further his own career.
Oh yeah, he definitely is.
And there's even a moment where they're in the helicopter on the way. He thinks he's on the way somewhere.
Yeah.
And
He thinks
says,
it's another human in the
So how do you think
helicopter
this is going to go? How do you think this vote's going to go? It's like, well, it's very popular, so it's going to be very tight. These votes are usually very tight like this when they're very popular. It's like, okay, he's just doing it. He doesn't even care.
No,
At the end of the day, he wants votes.
He just wants to be president or whatever he's running for.
It's
getting those votes.
He's looking out for himself.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then that also doubles over into, again, it's not the mutant that's the danger, it's the man inside the mutant, because Kelly is still the man inside the mutant when he's changed.
And then I love the idea. I don't care that they had some magical plot machine that turns people into mutants and they don't explain it. I was fine with that because I knew why they wanted to do it. They wanted all these high up political figures to have that shoe, to put their foot in that mutant shoe and see what it's like to be on the other side.
Yeah.
And that was amazing. They started with Senator Kelly and it worked. You had this guy who visibly hated mutants, and then all of a sudden he's on their doorstep.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm scared if I go to the hospital, they're going to be afraid of me. And it's like, well, we're not afraid of you. You're one of us, or whatever. It's so they caressed him with open arms, and I love that. What I didn't like, and I'm going to agree with you on this, it was the relationship, it was Sabretooth. He was good. He was amazing. Great casting. But I didn't know if he had the healing powers that he was supposed to have, because when he fights Wolverine, he gets stabbed. I was counting today. I watched it today.
And did he die at the end? I don't know.
I don't know.
No clue.
But when they introduced Sabretooth later on, and you gotta like strip all that away.
I know.
When you're watching the movie, because there was continuity errors everywhere.
There's continuity errors throughout the whole damn franchise. That's the problem.
So if you watch it as a one-off, okay, that's okay.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, though. Like, that's how, when they were writing
you gotta
that
watch
movie,
it. Yeah, you gotta watch it like that. They didn't know that they're going to shit on it later on.
So they had to kind of
Have
make it its own
foresight.
thing.
You're making a comic book movie. You don't think you're gonna make a sequel out of it?
They had Jubilee. They had Jubilee in the classroom.
You make a movie
in the 2000s
to make more movies. That's what you do
now. Yeah.
Okay. Well, here was an issue. Continuity errors. Jubilee. Somehow she was young,
especially with a comic book movie.
Well, she was young in the year 2000, but then they had her in X-Men.
But
Days
was
of
that
Future
Jubilee? Because they never ever said it was Jubilee.
The 80s.
Sure looks like Jubilee, but was it actually her? Because they never said it. Also, Kitty Shadowcat was not played by Ellen Page in this one.
They can recast people. That's happened lots of times before. I was fine with that. There was so many weird things. It was like I don't want to get into it, but it was just. I think the worst part about the movie for me is that they kept on making more movies after this, and those movies didn't remember the past movies.
No kidding.
And that blows my mind, because they hire people that are specifically there for continuity within the movie, within the franchise, and for some reason later on they forgot.
That's the thing. It didn't start out as the
and you know what's the funny thing?
It turned into the MCU, and then they started saying, "Let's bring this back."
Yes, that was it for me. Is that a lot of weird little one-off things that were popping up left and right. I'm like, oh, hold on a second. In the other movies, he had healing powers, so he should be alive, or they should show that he healed himself or something, or they had a relationship before. Wolverine might have forgot about it. That's cool. But did Sabretooth forget about it too?
I know, and that's the thing. They never say, and it drives you crazy.
And I was wondering,
because, come on,
he grabbed his dog tags.
Say, remember me, like something to say that it's there.
He grabbed his dog tags, and I'm thinking, okay, did he grab his dog tags because that's what he does, or does he grab his dog tags because that?
But that's what I mean. That's the
him
shitty part.
Remembering Wolverine. It's like, I'm gonna grab his dog tags because I was in the military with him.
The only feud that those two had was that he grabbed his fucking dog tags. There was no other past before that. Even though they have a whole history together, it's like, come on!
So yeah, that's the greatest gripe, is the continuity between the rest of the movies is very lackluster. And
even when they made Days of Future Past and they tried to fix the continuity, right when they got back into X-Men Apocalypse, it's like, oh, we're making those mistakes again. It's like, we fixed it, but we're just gonna keep on making those mistakes.
So like, no continuity. Continuity errors abound. And the relationship between Wolverine and Sabretooth as a whole, I didn't understand if he still had those powers, if he had memories of Wolverine, if there was a feud still. They didn't really get into that. Even like a 1-minute clip like Wolverine, I remember you, or I'll never forget that smell, or something.
Yeah, that would have been awesome.
Done. You tied it into the rest of the franchise.
That one line, I remember that smell. Would have been like, that's it. All the comic fans would have been like, he knows him.
In the comics and in the cartoon, Sabretooth liked to do this thing where on Wolverine's birthday, he would show up and cause havoc for Wolverine. Yeah. That was his thing. Yeah. He would track him down on his birthday with the scent, because they both had super smelling, super senses. And then he would just cause havoc. And I feel like they didn't really... Like, they did the smell thing for Wolverine, but they didn't really, like, Wolverine forgot the smell of
when you have a great rivalry and a great connection between characters like that, how do you just give it up and throw it out the goddamn window?
Yes. So that, I'll agree with you there. That was kind of very apparent. I didn't see
There are a lot of long-standing rivalries that they ignore, though.
Well, they had the friendship between Eric Lensher and
they did,
Magneto.
But did they really do that much with it? The only indication that you get of that is at the end when they're playing chess together.
Not really. They touched upon it more. Anyways, Boo, best and worst.
Yes, please.
We got to get out of here because we got 10 minutes left.
Before the world
I'm
blows
not
up.
going to be as harsh, I'll be quite honest, because I did quite genuinely enjoy this one. I think for me, my favorite scene, honestly, it would have to be... There's a lot... You guys mentioned a lot of great things. One of which I think, Jay, you brought up one of my faves was not specifically the casting, whether it be Professor X or Magneto. I could bring up a lot of other actors they did well, but I felt like, for me, Ian McKellen, the one scene where they had Magneto literally show his capabilities, where every gun in the vicinity was drawn on him, he didn't break a sweat. If anything, he knew exactly what was going to happen next. With the exception of Professor X kind of throwing in the mix where he was controlling his minions' power, their ability to control themselves anyway. But that whole instance where he not only had Professor X questioning on what he should do next, but he kind of forced his hand even further by not only having all the guns cocked, but literally, the trigger being pulled, right? So suddenly one gun was pulled. So one bullet is literally out in the open, and if it wasn't for Magneto, it would have killed one man, right? So again, going back to that darker tone that I think I was really appreciating at the beginning of the movie did well, and lost its, traction. Now, my least favorite, honestly, I think has to do with the scene you brought up with our introduction to Sabretooth. Not specifically because of Sabretooth, but because of how fucking convenient. Once again, it's one of these moments where I can even see it in my mind where Hugh turns to Rogue and says, Rogue turns to Hugh and says, you should really wear your seatbelt. It's like, listen, girl, I'm not, it basically goes on to explain. Don't tell me how to keep myself safe. And then lo and behold, a tree's in front of them, and all of a sudden he crashes through the windshield. And then, again, it was just a perfect little setup of, okay, now they're in danger. Okay, I get that. But then you realize, Sabretooth was the cause of it? Okay, fine. Okay, I can take that too. It just was an automatic lead up to Cyclops and Storm conveniently.
It was all very quick. They conveniently show up.
They were just out of the blue. This is just there, and I didn't know if I could take it for what it was, because I was really hoping for, even when I first saw this film, that introduction to them, I wasn't too impressed, because I was hoping for some really epic moment where, who knows, Wolverine and Rogue get up in a much more dangerous moment, but so happened to be in a vicinity where surveillance could catch them in danger for the X-Men to come to help.
It's called Cerebro.
I know.
Every mutant
there's a convenience.
Is accounted for.
There is a convenience that I feel like that's where Cerebro could come in here and say, okay, it could kind of cover all those mistakes by assuming as such, but that's where the assuming.
And they said they were tracking the Brotherhood's movements for months.
That's true. They did explain that, but you are absolutely right. The way it all happens is way too quick. It's not a grand enough entrance for the X-Men, even if it is just Storm, Cyclops, and Jean. I say just, but Jean and Storm are freaking powerful characters.
And I will say this,
which they never really use their full potential in this movie.
I think because I wasn't, again, a huge follower of the comics, I wasn't strongly familiar with the relationship between Sabretooth and Wolverine, but I was always aware there was some kind of history. Anything. So again, what you guys were ragging on about, though, I totally agree. There should have been a little bit more development between those two characters on a minimal level. I felt like there was absolutely none.
Especially since your movie's about Wolverine mostly. Like, how could you ignore one of the biggest part of his stories?
I think it's safe to say that's why I think Logan, this new upcoming movie there, is going to, from what I remember reading here, they're going to ignore literally all of the past X-Men movies. They kind of have to, because there's so many issues with continuity, they have no choice but to kind of reset it themselves so that they can start from a fresh slate. So I'm curious to see how they're going to do that. That's according to what they're saying they're attempting to do. So hopefully they get that right.
We'll see.
Yep.
All right, so any final closing statements, guys?
Go see the movie. I think it held the test of time. I watched it last night in 2017. I watched it when I was younger in 2000. It still had nostalgia factor. It still had comic book-ness. To me, it started the whole comic book boom, I would say, for comic book movies anyways. So yeah, go see it.
I would agree. I feel like if you're looking for a reasonable origin story for the X-Men in a cinematic sense, I feel like this one did it properly. There's some mistakes, but still a lot of good.
If you want to see a great performance of Ian McKellen, Patrick Stewart, and even you want to see where Hugh Jackman started as Wolverine, this is definitely a good one to see where it all started. But as for if you want to, I just think there's better superhero movies out there. It did start, the Marvel kind of movie thing, so there's that as well. So
yeah, its potential for growth and their ability to branch out with all the different characters really makes it a pretty good jumping off point for comic book movies. And inconsistencies aside, they're still very entertaining movies to watch, and this one here is still entertaining to watch. So
All right, so if you, well, first of all, before I get into this again, so you can always join the conversation with us on Twitter, and that's at We Promise Nothing. Drop the G. Check us out on Facebook. Give us a big old like there, and also make sure you go on to YouTube, like, subscribe, and share. Introduce a friend to this. Please leave a comment. We really appreciate that. So, this is a really awkward close. So, if you disagree with anything you heard on the show today, you can leave a comment below. But as always, we promise nothing. Good night. Let's go, bub.